In the 1950s, a man named Dr. Ansel Keys claimed that saturated fat caused heart disease. He published the 7-country study in 1956 linking fat to heart attacks. But he left out countries that didn't fit his desired outcome for the study. For instance, he omitted Germany, Switzerland, and France, where people ate a great deal of saturated fat, yet had low incidence of heart disease. Nevertheless, by 1977, the U.S. government officially told Americans to eat less saturated fat. The results of the study have never been independently analyzed. And most subsequent studies using similar approaches have failed to confirm its conclusions. Many scientists disagreed, but their voices were drowned out. For decades, studies that challenged the fat-heart link were buried or dismissed as flukes. Even today, money and politics keep the old fat is bad story alive. The American Heart Association still says to avoid saturated fat, despite science that says otherwise.
They warned us about butter like it was a gateway drug, but it turns out they were spreading more than margarine.
Well, and the real heart attack was the lie that they baked into every low-fat flavorless meal that we ever choked down.
This is Tab. She's been questioning health authorities since they told her SnapWells were good for you, and she hasn't forgiven them since.
Well, and this is Jim, and he survived the margarine era, but he's never going to forget the trauma of dry toast and fake butter.
And together
we're Unretired AF. Hello, and welcome to today's episode of the Unretired AF podcast. And today we're going to be talking about the great saturated fat lie and who profited from it. But before we start, we want to give a shout out to our subscribers. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you. If this is your first time here, welcome. And if you're a returning viewer, please consider hitting that subscribe button if you enjoy our content. All right, getting right into it. The Great Butter Betrayal. Well, in the 1950s, a guy named Ansel Keys, he all of a sudden started promoting the idea that fat was the enemy. He came up with what's called the diet heart hypothesis. And he used flimsy data. He cherry-picked the countries that he used in the data. And the guy apparently had an oversized ego.
Yeah.
And was very persuasive about
and pushing. And a pretty good bullshitter.
Yes, and pushing his ideas on everyone.
Yeah. He convinced the AHA, the American Heart Association, to adopt his theory. What helped? What helped with that?
The same thing we always have.
Yeah. Follow the money. A big fat donation to the AHA from guess who? Procter and Gamble. What did Procter and Gamble have at that time? Crisco. They gave $1.7 million in the 1950s, which was about $20 million now, to, I'm not going to say sway, but definitely to weigh his results.
Right.
Follow the money straight from the vegetable oil to the table.
Well, and I mean, at this point, I don't even think he really had any compelling studies.
No.
But what happened next is Eisenhower and margarine madness. So what happened around this time is that President Eisenhower had a heart attack, and the whole country was freaked out. So this dude, Ansel Keys, he was very persuasive, very manipulative. He got in with Dr. White, who was President Eisenhower's personal physician. And he convinced him that the low-fat diet was the way to go. And Dr. White adopted that. And so what happened is suddenly Americans all over the country were eating tub margarine like it was penicillin.
So what did that do to butter? Butter became the bad guy.
I love butter.
the outlaw butter. No one at that time was talking about sugar or carbs.
Yeah.
It was all fat equals bad.
Terrible.
It is. And because the AHA, the American Heart Association, made it policy in 1961 with no evidence, nothing to back up on any of the studies that were done.
Well, and then Mr. Ansel Keys did what's called the 7 country study. And what that is that was Keys' quote, big proof that the saturated fat was tied to heart disease. Except in his study, he left out, he omitted many countries, 3 of which were France, Switzerland, and Germany, all countries where the citizens ate a lot of saturated fat. They practically bathed in butter in France.
Right.
And they did not have high levels of heart disease. In fact, they had low levels of heart disease rates.
Yeah. So you know it and I know it. That's not science.
No.
That's rigging the game.
Exactly.
He didn't cherry pick, he cherry orcharded.
Exactly. That's exactly what he did. Well, and the real studies were buried. So what happened is when real studies came out, they showed no link between saturated fat and heart disease. And what happened to those results? They were stuffed in a drawer.
Yeah. A study of 9,000 people sat unpublished for 16 years. Why did that happen? The results didn't fit the narrative. The lead scientist said, we were just disappointed on how it came out.
I mean, isn't that crap?
Yeah. Kind of like the same thing that happened with COVID, isn't it?
It sounds very similar, doesn't it? It's like if the results don't show what they want, they just don't include them.
Yeah.
All right, the next section is the guidelines that lied to a generation. So the first official U.S. dietary guidelines came out in 1980. Prior to 1980, they didn't have anything like that. And when they came out in 1980, rather than using any of their own studies, they just parroted the American Heart Association's policy saying that, saturated fats are bad, don't eat saturated fats, it leads to heart disease. So, but all that was never based on any real reviewed evidence, and it wasn't then, and it isn't now.
So the U.S. dietary guidelines are updated every 5 years. Studies in the 2000s and beyond showed no link between saturated fat and heart disease. The 2015 and 2020 committees have just ignored them.
That's terrible. That's terrible.
It is terrible.
So what you're saying is that studies came out in the 2000s, yet these committees that update the U.S. dietary guidelines didn't even look at them.
No.
They just went according to Ansel Keys' flawed study, the 7 country study, and just kept on keeping on. So what does that tell you? Why would they do that? Why do you suppose they would do that?
I don't know, but I have a new best friend now.
Oh yeah?
Yes.
What's that?
Butter.
Butter and bacon.
And bacon. Bring it, bitches.
Well, and so I mean, all of our adult life, they have been preaching this theory that's not backed up with any science at all. I mean, there's no science that supports it. So I guess the takeaway for this episode is that for decades we've been lied to about fat. And people who spoke up were silenced, defunded, or just simply ignored.
Yeah. Turns out the real threat wasn't on our plates. It was behind the podiums,
right,
with the committees, and in the Crisco boardroom,
right,
which continues to this day.
Well, and probably in the political chambers too, because who's putting out the U.S. dietary guidelines? I mean, that's got to be a political thing too. And the thing about it, this isn't a partisan thing.
No,
we all have to eat. Every single American has to eat, and we deserve to have the truth from our government about things like this.
And who doesn't think butter on something makes it taste better?
Well, that's exactly, and who doesn't think a little bacon in everything doesn't make it taste better?
Exactly.
So, I don't
Butter.
exactly. We've been lied to. Well, and even though we're joking it right now, that's
Right.
pretty serious.
It
I mean,
is.
it's pretty serious when you consider the fact of how many millions of Americans have adopted their diet to be low fat and to be, contrary to what the real studies are showing.
Yeah. So if you have a comment about this, drop it in our comments section.
Yeah,
We'd like to hear what your thoughts are about this.
we definitely would.
The difference between butter and bacon or butter and bacon substitutes, as anyone that's ever eaten it knows, it's noticeable. It is a noticeable difference.
Right.
So if you have something to say or a story about, I don't know, a butter or bacon party, I want to hear about it. And why wasn't I invited? Drop it in our comments. We'll answer.
Exactly. And we gave you guys a lot of information in this episode. And if you go to the description of the episode, we have links for all the sources for everything. So you can read it for yourself. Don't take our word for it.
Right.
Read it for yourself. I mean, we have sources, one of them from PubMed. We have sources that reference the studies we're talking about. Read it for yourself. Do your own research. Don't trust anybody. Don't trust us even. No. Do your own research on it. So
even though I am your butter friend,
we will always be your ride or die butter friend. Oh my gosh. Well, if you've enjoyed our antics and you would like to see them on a regular basis, please consider hitting that subscribe button so that you can see our content every day, Monday through Friday, in your feed.
Thank you.
Well, we're not slowing down.
And neither should you.
And together, we're Unretired AF.